What up, friends? I'm James, your host, and today I'm going to be reviewing the new album by Little Simz, Gray Area. And yes, I know it's a bit late, but I actually didn't get around to listening to this album until fairly recently, but right after the first listen, I knew that this is an album that I have to review. While Little Simz' latest effort isn't exactly super experimental or anything, it's how well put together it is and how it oozes personality, passion, and skill that makes this album so great. The first song on this album, Offence, is just a great way to open the album. Right off the bat, we're greeted to an incredibly dirty and attitude-filled bass line and beat, and this almost like pan flute-esque synth that adds this kind of beauty and breathy sense of flow to the darker instrumental. Little Simz' flows are just perfect for this sound, and it's not like she's trying to show off or anything like that. Her skills are just that effortless. It's expertly crafted, finely tuned, and it's just the sound of someone who's confident and knows what they're doing. There's some great wordplay on this track as well, with her talking about how her being Jay-Z on her bad days and Shakespeare on her worst days, clearly confident in her lyricism, as she should be. And they introduce a common topic on this album, which is growing up and doing things your own way, and getting what you want yourself. And this is prevalent throughout most of the songs on this album, even if they do talk about other concepts as well. The chorus is also really catchy, and I like the cartoon sound effects in the end as well. It adds this kind of manic sense of progression and style to the entire song. Boss just adds to the grittiness of Offence, and you're immediately hit with a fantastic and powerful chorus on this track, and the intense and hard-hitting flows with an almost bluesy bass line. It adds to the themes of survival and owning your own life. It gives it that dirty and raw sound that I really enjoy. The swirling and rising synth during the latter half of the song is also really cool, and it contrasts the grittier instrumentals that they established previously on the production side of things. Selfish, however, takes a bit of a lighter approach. Cleo's Soul provides a very delicate chorus to lead off the song, and it also adds to the sadness of the lyrics that she's saying too. In addition, her vocals are also the perfect counter to Little Simz' vocals, whereas Little Simz are very dark, they're a little more raw and serious, and then Cleo's Soul is more, not necessarily passive, but they're more intimate in how breathy and just light and airy they are. Little Simz' flow is incredibly smooth over the jazzier beat on this one, and I do like how the more vulnerable instrumental adds to the reflection of the lyrics and trying to unlearn self-hate and to learn to love yourself. And I love pretty much every song on this album, but this is definitely one of my favorites. Definitely a highlight. With Wounds, we kind of go back to the darker instrumentals. The synth, like accordion sort of sound, along with the strings and the guitar riff, it's very menacing and foreboding. It's done in a more chaotic way compared to some of the previous songs. The previous songs were very raw, but they were more structured. This one is just kind of this impending sense of dread or whatever emotion you would think would come with a song like Wounds. And this fits the lyrics as well because she's talking about how we idolize people with unsafe lifestyles, and that leads to a cycle of hate and violence. She wants to break that cycle with sympathy and kind of lending a helping hand to people that are struggling or that are in these unsafe lifestyles to kind of pull them out. And this is because she brings up a point that the violence can be prevented, and that they weren't always this way, and it often stems from a lack of understanding how nobody really wants to help people who are struggling, or they don't understand people that are struggling, and she says that she does, and she wants to help them out. Chronix's chorus especially really adds to the desperation to find some change, and I feel like it's a very important message in today's climate of school shootings and race tensions and things like that. It's a cry for help, essentially, but it's also saying that we need to do something and take a stand about all the stuff that's happening these days. Venom is probably the only song that I don't love, and it's pretty much only because of the beat. The buzzing of the strings and the percussion-based instrumental just don't really go anywhere, and I feel like the lyrics and flow deserve something a bit more intense than what we got on this track. Maybe something more similar to Offence or Boss. Lyrically, I think it's really good though, and it stays true to the album's themes of empowerment. It's essentially an empowerment anthem, proving wrong the people that dismissed her because she's a woman or her lifestyle, what have you. She demonstrates her struggles, and she gets a little vulnerable here and there on this track, but it's mostly just how she overcame all the struggles that she's dealt with so far. 101 FM is another lighter song, probably one of the only few on this album. And this one is probably the only one that I could say is actually happy on this album. It almost sounds like an electronic take on a traditional Japanese song or something. Her flow is really bouncy and lighthearted for her too on this track, which is pretty nice to see compared to all the darker instrumentals and flows that we've had previously. I like the lyrics a lot on this track too. They're very nostalgic in a way, and she's reflecting and giving a life story on how she used to make music and play video games with her friends. It's a pretty feel-good vibe and very relatable. It's also a good way to break up the album and provide lighter lyrical concepts and instrumentals without also sacrificing the core concept of the record. Pressure is one of the more empty songs on the album. The flows are actually the thing that add the main dynamic to the song on top of the simple piano. The lyrics are smart, calling people to keep applying pressure to see the change that they actually want to see in the world. She also applies it to dealing with her own personal demons and succeeding in her own life as well. I really like the sampled vocals on this track, but I feel like Little Dragon's feature could have been a little bit better handled, I think. I like her part a lot, and I wish she was kind of sprinkled throughout the track a little bit more, maybe in place of the sampled vocals. I feel like if she was featured more in the song, she could probably replace them or at least sing them herself, and that would give her a bit more of a presence on the track that I feel that it kind of lacks right now. With Therapy, we're going back to the grittier sound, and it's fitting when we're talking about dealing with anxiety in her life and how she struggles within the public eye as a performer. She also expresses anxiety with Therapy itself, too. And I love the raw electric guitar in the second verse. It really demonstrates her frustration with her therapist and how people want to change who she is, but they're kind of being hypocrites because they're not perfect themselves. It's a dark song with a great and confident beat. It really kind of nicely sums up the turmoil that she's feeling with everything that's going on in her life. Sherbert Sunset is probably my favorite song on the record, and this delicate, warped beat with a nice, sensual guitar that really expresses her struggles with love, it adds a lot to the more vulnerable side of this album. It also shows her strength, too, in when she has to deal with a toxic relationship, but her vulnerabilities as well when we allow someone close to us to hurt us, and because of that, she kind of forgot herself, but she's also taking the time and effort to build herself back up again. I also wanted to bring attention to the chorus, which is probably my favorite moment on the entire record. I can see it coming from two perspectives, one of which being her old self or a parent or something like that, where they're happy that she's coming back home and getting out of the toxic situation that she was in and kind of getting back to safety. Or I could also see it coming from the abusive lover who's trying to sabotage her newfound independence and self-worth. I think the duality here is incredibly smart, and the great harmonizing on the vocals during the chorus as well is very soulful, and it just adds to the sense of it can go either way. It's always more complicated than people think it is, and situations like that require a little more delicate handling than you may think. Flowers, the last track, really sums up a lot of the themes of this album over one of the jazzier, more beautiful beats on the album. It's very honest lyrically, dealing with her life as it is, with the state of the world, the public eye, her mental health, and things like that. Michael Kiwanuka's chorus especially is very serene, and I love the brass section that comes in here. It's the only instance of it on the record, so it really stands out because of that, and it highlights the elegance and importance of her message. This was a pretty fantastic project overall, and it's a great combination of intensity, elegance, and honesty. The beats were intricate and varied for the most part. I really like the variety of them on the record. And the flows and lyrical topics were also pretty broad and not one note as well. I like the variety there too. Some features I feel could have been handled a bit better, mainly Little Dragons, and Venom's beat wasn't as up to par as the rest of the record, but that's only because the rest of the record was so brilliant. But those are pretty much my only complaints. It's a pretty awesome record. She did an excellent job, and I can't wait to hear more from her in the future because I'm a new fan. I am feeling a decent 9 on Little Simz's Gray Area. I love this album, man. It's really good. Now, of course, we do have to talk about the album cover on this show, and I really like the album cover here as well. I love the pose that she's in and how it's kind of like a mix of the darker and more sensual side of the record. The intense contrast between the darks and the lights on this is really cool. And it really just sums up the fact that, yes, this is a darker, a bit more of a grittier album, but it also has elements of beauty and elegance to it as well. And I think that really comes out in the album cover, so they did a great job on that. But that is my thoughts on Little Simz's Gray Area. What did you guys think about this record? Did you like it and love it and listen to it a lot, or did you just discover it recently like I did? Let me know in the comments down below. And until the next one, farewell.